they are also very keen to join this session. They are on my list. If time permits, I would very much like to give them the floor. There are also requests from some of his close friends who studied with him. They have also approached, and we would very much like to accommodate them. My idea is also to convey our collective sort of support for his family members. His wife is here with us on this panel, and also his daughter. His daughter was also teaching in the same university where Milindo was. She is professor of English literature at OP Jindal, where Milindo was teaching this. And Milindo took 1 year leave to be with me in Nalanda. And I was just mentioning to my colleagues that yesterday Milindo was supposed to be at Nalanda for this year. He took one full break and he was supposed to come and teach. He had started doing some research in Delhi office of Nalanda, and it's a big loss for development community. His idea of balance between quantitative and qualitative techniques for impact assessment, his idea of North-South and South-South cooperation, the principles of the Global South and their governance, his ideas on triangular cooperation and the way developing countries should work with the North, his ideas on agriculture and rural areas where developmental push may derail the local culture. Some of those dimensions of his approach are relevant for all times to come and would also be reminding in terms of our collective commitment that is needed to take these issues forward. With these words, I would very much like to begin today's discussion. On my list, number one is Professor Li Xiaoyun, who is our dear friend in this community and has been leading Chinese Agriculture University in Beijing and has been working on issues related to rural development. I see Diana joining in from Li Xiaoyun's team, but I still do not see Li Xiaoyun himself. Are you here, Li? If not, then I would just move on and would like to request Stefan to open our panel today. Stefan Klingberg is head of research program on international development cooperation at IDOS in Germany. Stefan, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Sachin, and good evening. And apologize for doing my contribution from a train because of extreme winter weather conditions in Germany at the moment. First of all, I really want to express my deep condolences to Milindo's family, of course, to his friends, and also to all his colleagues. So I had the privilege to collaborate, to discuss, to brainstorm, to engage with Professor Milindo Chakravarty for at least the last 10 years as a colleague, as a friend, and I really want to say that was a privilege. Let me just make few remarks on this. So the first thing I want to mention is Milindo was a great Southern thinker. He inspired many discussions. I remember many discussions as when it comes to the daily process. I remember discussions at Jindal University. I remember joint discussions at international conferences in Buenos Aires, in New York, where Milindo's voice was always very important in many regards because he was exactly what you are saying, such a deep thinker with many reflections. So he contributed in many ways with a very independent view on topics and with a very clear understanding about views, perspectives, needs of the Global South. Just to mention a few topics I still remember very much. I think he invested a lot in efforts when it comes to Southern views on how to look at the effectiveness of South-South cooperation. I think this was really one of the main topics he was working on. And of course, he was one, together with you, Sachin, working a lot on the development compact approach. So those are just few of many academic projects he was inspiring, he was leading on. My second thought I want to share with you is he was a great academic teacher. I had the privilege that we were supervising together a PhD student for the last couple of years. And this was really impressive to see how Professor Milindo was providing guidance in many ways. We all know that the PhD project is something what is not easy for PhD students. So this role as a supervisor was always something what was very close to his heart. I remember many discussions at Jindal University where he had always an open ear for all of his students. Let me also remind you that I came to India to Delhi with a group of postgraduate students from my institute, and he was ready for many long, in-depth discussions with those students. I was always impressed how his patience was a very important asset for my students to get a better understanding about India, about think tanks in the global south, about this kind of independent southern thinking. So that was really something what was impressed me in many ways. My last point I want to make here is Milindo was such a kind man, really a very kind man. One of my latest trips to Delhi, he invited me to go to one of the restaurants from his home region. And it took him, I think, the complete day to come to my hotel to pick me up. I think we were driving close to 2 hours just to get there for this very special place, and of course the entire way back. So what I want to say is he was investing so much in this kind of personal relationship. He was always kind. I mean, sometimes you might understand that as a German I'm not very patient when it comes to delays and all those things, but Milindo, there was no way how to make him in a way angry or not to be patient. So this kind of kindness is something what I really remember. So that's a very huge loss to me, to the entire academic discussion, and of course for his family. This is really so heartbreaking. Thank you, Sachin.
Thank you. Thanks, Stefan, for reminding us of great qualities Milindo had. You are absolutely right. He was a deep thinker who could bring in independent perspectives, irrespective of geopolitical divides. And he was completely unmindful of several of those issues that, as head of RIS, I had to keep in mind, and he was free from all that. So he was more like a free thinker flying in all directions, and then I had to make efforts to bring him back on. And several occasions are there. You are absolutely right. He was a kind man with a lot of ideas for fine dining, and his wife Suparna was telling me the last time when he was hospitalized, doctor said the admission in the hospital would take some time, and he was so fond of very fine dining. He told his wife that let us go for lunch, and they went for lunch before getting admitted to the hospital. So this was his real passion for life, and it was within 2 days that we lost him. So Suparna is here. Let me now request our dear friend Andre de Malo de Souza from EPEA in Brazil. So Andre.
Many thanks, Sachin. My deepest condolences To the family of Milindo, thank you for the opportunity of remembering him and speaking about him. Um, like Stefan, I have known Milindo for about 10 years. Actually, I remember we met uh, at an occasion in Manila in the Philippines for an event that was being organized by Reality Evade. This was in 2016. I barely knew him, but during that event, they placed us in the same room. So we became intimate very quickly, so to speak. And we had the opportunity back then to start discussing South-South cooperation and issues related to South-South cooperation. Um, since then, he has played a very important role in the network of Southern think tanks, which we founded in 2014. He was a distinguished representative from RIS at the time, and during the several meetings and discussions in the ambit of the network, he was very active and gave very important contributions as well. He interacted with great minds, and that that came across in discussions with Milindo all the time. One that comes to mind, and perhaps the most noteworthy, was Nobel laureate Eleanor Ostrom. I believe she was his PhD advisor. I may be mistaken, but that's what I recall. And he used to tell a lot of stories of his discussions with her, including as to the importance that she placed on understanding rural realities and and the rural sector of the economy. Milindo used to say that according to Ostrom, you can't be a social scientist without doing field work in rural areas. And he also interacted with others as well. But his work has always focused on the intersection of academic and policy. And so, while at the same time he had the academic rigor and training of a great social scientist, he was also very concerned about the practical implications of knowledge, right? And this was very useful in the ambit of the nest and in also the work that we do within governmental think tanks, such as RIS and such as my own in Brazil. As has already been mentioned, he gave striking contributions to South-South cooperation discussions, different concepts and approaches. I also recall the one on impact assessment or assessment of development cooperation, which he opposed to the approach that's more traditional from the North. It is impact evaluation. And he did so in a way that was both compelling and innovative, original, so to speak. I remember in particular how he spelled that out in the BAPA plus 40 conference that took place in 2019 in Buenos Aires. And his presentations were different in their depth and the profoundness of the ideas that he presented. That's something that has always struck me. In BAPA, for instance, I remember a participant in one of the many events that we had there opposing his view, saying, you cite authors and arguments from the early 20th century or those that are outdated. And his response right to the point was, ideas cannot be judged by their age. That's not how we assess their merits. And they should not be abandoned just because they are old. He was someone who was highly motivated in all spheres of life. That's also something I admired about him. I remember in particular being with him in Madagascar for an event of the United Nations. This was in 2019, and he already had difficulty walking, but that had never stopped him. And he was also always very interested in talking to the local people of that country, even more than sightseeing or seeing the main attractions. He was always very open and very interested in the lives of poor people who were locals and who were living there, and trying to get a better understanding of their reality. So it was also a privilege for me to share that with him in that occasion. He played an important role as well in the Global Public Investment GPI network, and I see that a lot of people in the group, it's a large WhatsApp group of the network, have remembered him during these last days, and that also speaks to his concern in creating a better world, I would say, and the recognition of others of that concern. As has already been pointed out, he also had an important role as a professor in Jindal Global University and other institutions. He was always very concerned about students. He invited me several times to give lectures to his students, as he did with other foreign scholars and researchers, some of which are here. He also invited us to advise his students. So this genuine concern about the education and the opportunities that he was offering to students in his institution is also something that should be recognized. I remember he had also a role as an editor in Development Cooperation Review, the journal of IRS, and he was a very effective one, including a very insistent one, right? Always pushing for articles, catching what people say in different presentations and asking them, well, put that on paper and submit an article to our journal. And I remember the journal really picked up as a result of his efforts. And in that vein, he also contributed to our own journal of IPEA. We held a special edition on the G20, and there's an article by him. Like Stefan, he also took me and others for lunch in Delhi. I think this was in 2022, in one of the last editions of the Delhi process events, to a restaurant that served Bengali food, right? Food from his estate in India. And so that also speaks to his generosity, as well as, you know, all his other efforts in all spheres of his professional and personal life. So to sum up, he was not just a great scholar, he was also a great human being. He will be dearly missed by all of us. And I don't see much else we can do other than recognize that and to recall his legacy. So thanks again, Sachin, and I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thanks, Andre, for reminding so many good qualities Milindo had, and also the contributions that he came up with, both in our professional discussions, our professional seminars and engagements, but also through his writings and in his classrooms, and in all these places. Let me now bring in Elizabeth Sidropoulos, who has been identified as one of the leading figures of Africa. But more than that, she is a dear friend, leading the SAIA, the South African Institute for International Affairs, and also just finished with the G20, the first round of G20 that is needed. And that G20 with the first round, let's see what direction it goes. But Elizabeth has been a dear partner in several of this, and after Elizabeth, it would be Shubhmoy Bhattacharjee and then Mario. So, Elizabeth.
Great. Thank you very much, Sachin. And good morning. I'm actually currently in Toronto. I'm still on leave, which is why I'm here. But firstly, let me express both my personal condolences to Milindo's family, as well as those of the Institute. He not only worked with me, but other colleagues over many years. And this is just to echo what everybody has already said, and I'm sure others will say, is a real loss, not just to the academic community, but to the policy community, and most definitely to the global South. I'm going to pick up where Andre left off and sort of talk a little bit about the man. Milindo was always soft-spoken, He was humble, he was measured, but he was extremely sharp. And these are the qualities that come to mind when I think of Milindo. There was also a twinkle in his eye, and his smile betrayed both his sense of humor, but also his kindness. As with Stefan and Andre, I got to know Milindo probably just over a decade ago, during a time when we were all very engaged in the heated development cooperation debate, South-South cooperation, how you assess impact, whether we should have one harmonized global development cooperation framework. All these were many of the were part of the discussions that then, in fact, led to the creation, the establishment of the network of Southern think tanks, where the cooperation, getting to know Milindo, I think, happened very much through that process. And of course, the nest, as we called it, was intended to focus and amplify the voice of the South in these debates and develop new paradigms for analyzing development and I would argue the broader global order. And that's where, as colleagues have said, Milindo really made a significant contribution. Of course, as we sit here in January 2026, how the world has changed. And I think in very much the way that characterized Milindo, Milindo would have been both a valuable a contributor, but also I think a very passionate analyst of what we're experiencing at the moment. He was very much a forward thinker and a person, as others have said, who strove for justice and a fairer and more equal world in the way in which he did his research. He mentored students. He mentored us as well. As an accomplished scholar, development economist, teacher, think tanker, mentor, he was one of the pioneers that raised the voice of the Global South intellectuals and demonstrated the value and the need for the South to take its rightful place in the global knowledge community. And very importantly, and it's not something that you necessarily find in aspects of the global knowledge community. He was always generous with his intellect and his ideas. And as Andre said, always inquisitive and always curious. That was the measure of the man. But this is exactly the point. This is not only about his professional intellectual achievements, but also very much the kind of man he was. And I thought I'd reflect a little bit, although Sachin will probably correct me, a little bit sort of building on ancient philosophies. And here I thought I'd take Hindu and Greek and look at what how they define a good person. In Greek philosophy, they talk about arete, the virtue of being at the core of a good man, that is cultivated through reason and intellect. I think in Hindu philosophy, there is also parallels. A good person has the virtues of humility, of modesty, of trustworthiness, of devotion. A good man is one whose life is guided by principles and purpose. I think Milindo was the epitome of these qualities. Beyond his intellectual achievements and contributions to teaching and mentoring a younger generation of Global South thinkers and practitioners, it would be correct to say he's left footprints in our hearts. There is a wonderful quote in, I was thinking about it this morning, there was a wonderful quote in the film, the Browning version. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's probably about 30 years old, but I think it's a fitting line to pay tribute to Milindo at this point, where there is a quote from that says, "The gods from afar look graciously upon a gentle master." Milindo, may you rest in peace, but you will always be with us in our memories of you.
Thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. I think it's befitting tribute to men who really was kind-hearted, soft-spoken, as you very rightly described, but always measured, sharp, witty, and with this reference that you got to his eyes. So he had this very mischievous sort of smile all the time in terms of coming up and pagging his arguments. I always had discussions with him because at some point he was extreme left for most of his life. And that's where my fight with him was. And I was thinking that I'm turning him around, but every time he would have this mischievous smile, Elizabeth, that you mentioned, and he would support my arguments. So this idea, I think, is a lifetime reward for us to take it forward. Let me now bring in Shubmoy Bhattacharjee, who has joined us from some movement that he has. So Shubmoy, can you hear me? Can you please join? Shubmoy? You are on mute. I think he has some problem. Let me then request Mario, the very dear friend, who wrote an excellent tribute for Milindo on LinkedIn. Mario, over to you.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, when I woke up and heard the news, my thought was immediately that a friend has gone. In Milindo, I found a friend, and a friend of commitment and ideas, which is, under my point of view, what defines friendship. You share commitments and ideas. And an economist like him, a non-neoclassical economist, in which I recognize what I prefer, and no attached to rigid disciplinary belonging, but trying to understand the nature of problem and opportunities independently from the tool that you use in order to explain them, was for me an important experience to share some of my time with him. And I would like to stress three things concerning these experiences with Milindo. The first has to deal with cooperation. Many have stressed the point. What I found in Milindo is that for him cooperation was understood as a necessity, not as something that you can add as an interesting additional variable in analysis, but as something which is crucial at the heart of the relationship between people. Doesn't matter if they are researcher, philosopher, or people in rural areas. Cooperation is crucial in these days, and Milindo came to my mind several times, in particular in the last hours, because you cannot look at things only in terms of power or in terms of trade. Between people and countries, relation must include also cooperation. He was always there to remember to us the crucial point. The second element, I would say, echoing Elizabeth, is philosophy. Milindo, for me, I represented always, in my mind, Milindo as a philosopher, as somebody that was connecting ideas, dialoguing with ideas. And it was extraordinarily interesting to see him in the discussion in the daily process to which I was invited by Sachin, and this was the origin of the friendship with Milindo, seeing him always on the border of the discussion, looking at those that were discussing, listening, thinking, and only at the end of this process coming back with an interpretation, a line, ideas that were strong, that were hard, that were heavy, were not just superficial. That's the way in which I represent myself, a philosopher. And I think that this practice of developing ideas was also the way in which he reacted with people. You mentioned his experiences in rural areas, or in any other condition. He was speaking with people at all levels, and then you saw that there was in him a tension to transform his thinking into a theory, which is the highest level of the relationship you can have with people, because you want to make an interpretation and develop out of an interaction which is dense and intense and real something more. This tension towards this universal thinking was for me crucial. And then also my third point is the bridge. Milindo was always building bridges. I saw it in the work that we had in these last 3 years in the Development Cooperation Review, together with Elizabeth Legburk, which is here. We found in Milindo always an effort to go farther, to connect with other people. Doesn't matter if they were researcher, university people, minister, activist. His interest was to discover further connection and borders in the discussion and in the action. And he wanted to connect, of course, and mainly actors from the South and in all continent. Doesn't matter where we went with Sachin and Milindo in Buenos Aires. He was very well known. He was discussing with people everywhere, but also connection with those in the North that could accept the condition of a frank, direct, and cooperative discussion, which is something I think we need. I don't like the people of the North because I belong to them, but we need also this type of discussion. So for all this reason, it leaves in me, and I think in us, a way of thinking that was very original, that was coherent, and at the same time was not obsessional, was open, and for all those very reasons, I hope we could travel far and serve these public goods as we will all do, thanks to the example he gave to us.
Thank you. Thanks, Mario, for reminding us of his great work on BAPA plus 40. Andre also alluded to it. He was passionate champion for the Global South. And I think his work and writings in this area, particularly through Development Cooperation Review, would be remembered for long. Let me now bring in Shubmoy. I think he has got connected. So Shubmoy, please.
Can you hear me now?
Sachin? Yes. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. And sorry for putting you in the trouble. You've already, as I said, first of all, major thanks from me for having organized this particular event. The reason I say so is there was one thing which I'd always had a cavil with Milindo, which is that, and all the esteemed speakers before me have alluded to the same thing, which is that Milindo was extremely generous with his ideas, but extremely frugal in taking ownership for those ideas. This is something that I had always, whenever I had a discussion with him, and these discussions would roll on for hours, often cutting into meeting times or other things, was that he had original ideas, but he would not, and to a degree, to a point where I think this is actually a loss, that he did not take ownership for some of the most brilliant ideas that he had, and which I think is a loss for the development community. I allude to the fact that development literature, despite being spread across some excellent, and I should say wonderful institutions of the Global South, suffers from the fact that there's a concentration bias. And there is, as he himself had pointed out in a lot of literature and other things, that there are names and others that we take with reverence, but it stays there. Milindo, I think, could have taken his place there if he had only been a bit more, what I should say, materialistic in taking ownership of ideas that he espoused. One of the greatest ideas that he discussed was the fact that in countries like India, for instance, when we look at the development industrialization, a major study that he did was that the Indian industrial development had often focused on trading income rather than income from research and development. Today, we talk a lot about research and development. Today, we talk a lot about the fact that there is a need for investment in sunrise industries. When Milindo was discussing this thing with me about almost 10 years ago, I remember, it was something that wasn't even thought about. And he wasn't talking about this as a sort of a, idea that has come along, but he had solid data to substantiate it. He had done good amount of work, both at North Bengal University as well as later on, where this had been clearly evident. And I had discussed with him the need for having to come out to talk about it, to actually take ownership and to discuss and to take it forward. As usual, he was willing to share the idea with his friends, with his students, with his legion of students who were extremely friendly with him, and anybody to save himself. And I think that is where I'm quite disappointed that having come from a very unusual background, he was friends I know on personal terms with lots of people whom in modern India there's been problems, but he knew them and he had the right to disagree with them. He could disagree with them personally. He could also yet point out to others like me who are on the other end of the spectrum why their points of view mattered. It was a remarkable capacity in an individual. And I think this capacity to manage contradiction was something that Milindo brilliantly carried through. And I really feel that we lost the ability to harness more of his ideas and insights in the development literature. I'll stop here. And Sachin, I know there are a lot of people there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Shubhmoy, for reminding us of the frugality that you alluded to. You are absolutely right. He was not only generous with his time, but also with his ideas. And many of our colleagues have rightly spotted that. Let me bring in somebody with whom he joined to teach. And this is Professor R. Sudarshan, Dean at Jindal School. And Milindo was extremely appreciative of Sudarshan's ideas on development, his approach on grounded strategies and connecting with rural areas. So Sudarshan, over to you.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you for bringing us together. I see so many familiar faces. I would not have known them, but for Milindo being my colleague in the School of Government and Public Policy. He invited several of the people that are there on the screen to address his class. He managed to get several of our students to participate and to benefit by these associations. So even though our university boasts that global is its middle name, there is a special significance to the word global that Milindo brought that maybe others in the university didn't quite understand. For many, it would be, connections, having memoranda of association with top universities in the world and encouraging students to go off and do a semester and so on. But Milindo's idea of the global was not that. He picked institutions and people who would genuinely shape the ideas of our students. He wasn't going to play along with that if this semester at, some prestigious universities in your CV, you're going to get ahead in life. He never encouraged that kind of attitude. He picked the people, and these are people here on the screen today, who meant a lot to Milindo, who meant a lot to our students, and whose ideas mean a lot. So one immediate request I would say is that I'd like this association that Milindo brought to our university and my school with the people who are here remembering him to continue. That would be one way of acknowledging how vital and important Milindo's contribution to the university has been. I would dearly miss him as a colleague because, and the point has been made that he was a man of principle. And one principle, again, where all universities are, running after rankings and want publications in Scopus listed journals. Milindo was absolutely clear from the outset that knowledge is a global good, public good, and any journal that charges you $80 for its article or is priced beyond the means of ordinary students, he would never publish that. He said that that goes against the principle that knowledge is a public good and it should be shared freely. And so, in spite of all the incentives that universities offer to get on the bandwagon of pursuing rankings, and since the ranking agencies look at number of Scopus publications, Milindo didn't care a hoot about it. But that didn't make any difference to the extent of respect that he commanded among his colleagues. So I would say to some extent, Shivamoy's point is that, these journals are the vehicles for when people, write up their ideas and, get recognition. But he consciously avoided it. And he avoided it for a principled reason, not because he was lazy. His contributions to several of the policy briefs at RIS are a testimony to that. His role in, summarizing outcomes of conferences is a testimony to that. His distinction between extraction as a mode of the global economy for the greater part and intersection, which is a way forward connected to sustainability and respect for nature and the environment, is a very original idea of which he's not the only one. People here, Mario and others, are part of developing those ideas. But he didn't want, he didn't have to be in the American Economic Review or the American Political Science Review to say that, I have made a mark and these are the ideas. So he connected to people who were like him in a way, that were committed to certain principles. And for some time, he was the dean for internships and the capstone projects that we have for our students. And he managed to get many of them to go abroad. And thanks to so many people today paying tributes to him, some of our students were able to go to, Seoul, to Brazil, to Germany, because he had these contacts. So it's a big loss for me because as a faculty member, he was, the wise person, right? I mean, he didn't say very much, but when he spoke up, it had an immediate impact because he was soft spoken. And one of the things that I think in this age of, quick fixes and students depending on AI and so on that he emphasized was the distinction between information, knowledge, and wisdom, and the importance of theory. I used to have discussions with him, and I recall that we talked about how Hume talks about a person who just gets multiple perceptions from their sense organs, and yet what is it as a matter of personal identity? What is it that holds all those perceptions together? So in like way, he emphasized the importance of theory. He was teaching evaluation and would preface that before he went into examples of monitoring and evaluation to get the students to understand why theory is important, why understanding a theory of evaluation is important. This was taxing to students, but he wasn't compromising on that. He insisted that they first master and understand the importance of theory. And that's a mark of a great teacher, because in the end, we have all kinds of things, but to be able to explain something, to be able to understand why certain phenomena are recurrent, why certain things happen the way they do, one needs a theory. And you could have multiple theories and discuss them. And he was very open-minded about doing that too. But it's rare nowadays to find teachers who are, rooted in, as somebody made a mention of the scholarship of the early scholarship of the Greeks, for instance, right? And to say that ideas, don't have a shelf life, and good ideas survive and last, and that fads and fashions are, to be dismissed, and you focus on what matters. So I think, and he was a very great communicator in class, because complex ideas about, he was good in microeconomics, he's good in development practice, all of these things. But, was a great asset to our students. And so it was a very sad for me when he had a couple of health setbacks which slowed him down, but it didn't stop him. And you see, I mean, I would have thought that someone with pain in his legs, finding it difficult to walk, just picked up and went off to Nalanda University to be with Sachin, when, some of us more able-bodied had different excuses and couldn't go. Milindo went. And, it's a physical commitment, right? I mean, he didn't let his health setbacks stop him from doing that. That's because he cared about what the larger enterprise is all about, and not be distracted by these little hurdles that the physique throws. So he was a man who, in a way, was after the soul of development, not its technical features and GDP per capita and so on. I mean, he was after trying to understand what really mattered to people. What is the soul of development? So for someone who cared about the soul of development, we have to say that he is a great soul in his own right, and we are very indebted to him. And one way of carrying his legacy is to keep this group going with the contacts and ideas that he had, and to I personally would be very, very interested in continuing some of these contacts and relationships. And the other important point is not to, as I mentioned earlier, is to link with institutions within the global south, and not always look westward and the United States and so on. But there's this idea that there are people who still have to get over the scourge of colonialism, and therefore the standard economic theories are not going to help them, and therefore wonderful ideas of the kind that was a great exponent of the ideas of Eleanor Ostrom on how communities and collectivity of communities can solve major problems that the state and the market cannot. And so these are things that we have to stay with. And I take a pledge to do what I can as long as I'm in the position I am in. And having lost a very dear colleague, I extend my condolences to the family. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sudarshan, for liberating the idea. And also, you are absolutely right. The group should remain together. We are connected and fortunately working on this cause for the last couple of years. So this group would remain. Friends, we are running out of time. I have two more speakers with me who are on my list, Professor S.K. Mohanty and Nicola. I can take one or two more. Those who are interested may indicate. But these two persons I would request to take and be brief. So let me first request Professor Mohanty.
Thank you. We are here today with heavy hearts to mourn the untimely demise of Professor Milindo Chakravarti, a great scholar, a teacher, and a thinker. I think all of us agree that he had made very uh, remarkable contribution in terms of academics and also in terms of teaching. His sudden departure has created a void that is difficult to fill. I remember that he stayed with RS for slightly more than a decade, very short time, but he left a very impressive academic imprints that will long be remembered with us. I always discuss with him that when he used to come from Jindal University, after hours of teaching, you can very well see that he's still extremely energetic, and he'll also work for very long time in RIS, contributing to different issues. So his energy and dedications are truly inspiring to us. But we always see that he's not only a dedicated researcher, but also a critical thinker. In most of the times, we see him that he tries to theorize things whenever there are discussions on serious issues. Because of that, you can see he worked in diverse areas. But development economics was at its core. That one can very well see that most of the time his work was mostly focused on global south, working on development cooperation, triangular partnership. So he also was the editor of a journal, Development Cooperation Review. I remember that in the initial stage, to bring credibility to a journal is a very difficult task, and how much of energies he really devoted to ensure that a journal really came up in its own strength. He worked on many other issues. One day he came and showed me some empirical work on village level development, which we call it as Gram Panchayat, particularly about the empowerment of women in different villages, how really power can be transferred to women's section to bring radical development in Indian villages. Sometimes also he tried to work on fishery policies, fishery subsidies, and also plight of small and marginal farmers across developing countries. He is strong perception about the fishery subsidy discussion in the WTO was really remarkable. Another Dr. Andre said about his work about impact assessment. He was arguing, he was teaching in Jindal about impact assessment. But when a major study came to arise, I remember that how he tried to practically implement project evaluation, developing new methodologies in the light of impact assessment, keeping in view the southern perspective, particularly to assess the work of Department of Science and Technology and Biotechnology in India. So he really immensely contributed in RS about research. Equally, he is a very good teacher. I had the opportunity to discuss with him about his teaching, so that one lecture is more than 5 hours. Simply, it is very difficult for us to imagine that how really you can spend such long hours in teaching. But we see that despite of such long hours of teaching, students remain engaged with him. So regarding his teaching, I was discussing sometime that how do you prepare for such long lectures? He said that I prepare a press for each class, and after completion of the class, I generally discard them to ensure that next time when it takes a similar class, those could be original, and you can see freshness in them. So that is his approach towards teaching, towards research. So for me personally, his passing is not only the loss of a colleague, but of a close friend. May God grant his family the strength to bear this profound loss, and may his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mohantiji, for highlighting his contributions. Let me now bring in Nicola, our dear friend, Nicola Vachon.
Thank you. Thank you, Sachin. Thank you, friends. I would have preferred that we had met together in other circumstances, such as to celebrate one new findings of Milindo. But I would say it's not just about remembering him, and I will not add anything to what was said, but about valuing his legacy, right? Because I think there is in Milindo's work and a thorough collaboration with each and every one of us, but also with the different institutions, something to build upon. He was to come to Nalanda as part of a sabbatical. There could have been other ways to take a sabbatical than to come to Nalanda, but that was his decision. And I hope a lot of you who have not yet visited Nalanda, Dean Sudarshan, you are more than welcome to join in. But apart from that, when in the peak of the COVID, we were all stuck in questioning about the whereabouts of where to go, etc. And we initiated a series of online discussions very empirically. And then Milindo, thanks to Sachin, joined in. Then it became a global editorial project called Intersecting. And out of largely Milindo's strong intellectual support, it was not just one book, but it became a collection of books. And so far, we have edited 11 volumes. And now, reason why I'm mentioning that is we are preparing, together with Sachin and Nalanda, a new volume for next year. And Milindo, the last time we discussed, he and I, was at the very end of last year. And he was enthusiastic about taking this sabbatical to work again and in a deeper way on the development of Intersecting. Because now the problem is not of a virus and a pandemic, it's a pandemic of another dimension that is catching the world. One of dire dismantlement of a number of institutions and regulations, and etc. And the way to think about the future of development, the future of development strategies, the future of rural development, the future of urban-rural balance, the future of sustainable development, the future also of all the legacy that each and every one in this virtual room, right, has been working over the past decades. All those issues are at stake. And I think he would have liked very much that we continue this work and we build on that. Yeah, we will clearly miss him because some of the very sharp insights, especially out of his long collaboration with Elinor Ostrom, have been extremely useful. And this intersecting versus extracting, etc., that he has pushed has been also extremely useful. But I think we can build upon his ideas, his spirit, his kindness, his insights, his sharpness, but also his ways that I know Sachin has been sharing very much, to think about international cooperation, not just as a balance of competition or global south or global north or triangular, etc., but as something genuine, and something that can build upon both qualitative, quantitative, but also other conceptual approaches very nicely and very sharply. So thank you very, very much. I think it was very important to have this remembrance time, but it's not just about remembering again, it's about shaping a living legacy. And please stay tuned because we will need to work on this legacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Nicola. And you rightly reminded us of the work that Milindo initiated, nurtured, and you took it forward in terms of the intersections. And we would very much like the group to come up and contribute to the next volume when you are planning, remembering Milindo and bringing in the dimensions that are there. Friends, we are just about to close. I would very much like to open it up if anybody would like to seek the floor, express any feeling, any experience with Milindo, and then we would be closing. We have crossed the time, but I just want to be more inclusive. Everybody has feelings for Milindo. Everybody wants to say for long, and with Milindo, many more ideas are there. I would very much like colleagues to take the floor. I see one hand from my dear colleague Kishore, and then hand by Dr. Shastri. So please, 1 minute each, and we quickly move forward. So Kishore, please.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I just first had an opportunity to interact with him, the Professor Milindo, in Delhi in the last week of June during that discussion of the newly launched MA Economics course. And even in the brief, the interaction, it became immediately clear that he was not just an economist, but a thinking scholar, someone who constantly pushed the boundaries of how economics should be taught and understood and practiced. So he offered valuable the suggestions to strengthen our the curriculum, and most importantly, he emphasized that how reintegrate ethics into the economics, which is something which is missing, increasing missing in the contemporary discourse. And so he has taken a few modules of a qualitative research methods. Though initially it was online, and then later he has come to the Nalanda, and then he spent time with us. And during his his time at Nalanda, so we have discussed many issues, and students also enjoyed his philosophical economics, and then the way ethics is required in research. So this is what so he was planning to come again in the December, the last week of December, and that time he was hospitalized. But he said Kishore, I will teach the students online. And then he also promised that he will come in the join us in the January and then teach the development economics along with the Professor Chaturvedi. But unfortunately, so we missed students. Actually, a couple of my students were actually expecting his lectures, and then not just economics but other schools like ecology and environment studies and then Buddhist studies students. They were expecting his lectures on ethics and economics. So we miss him. So may his soul rest in peace. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Kishore. I see Olga and Eleanor. If anything they want to add, but before that, let me bring in Dr. Shastri.
Thank you, sir. First of all my personal condolence to the family, and it is a big loss for academic community, for Nalanda community, and the Milindo. One thing with Milindo, sir, I have planned a lot on quantitative techniques that my student will carry forward, and we will work together. Now that plan has to be again reframed. It's a big setback. But one of his landmark statement, two things. Yes, he really likes food very much, and I used to have dinner with him. Prior to that, he checked all the food which he would like to eat and take the insulin before that, because both of us are diabetic. He was diabetic and a very humble person. And his landmark statement, which made me think every day when I use these electronic gadgets and all the stuff of comfort, he used to say that only species on the earth is human being involved in production. So I think again and again that all species are surviving without production except the human being. This is something which I will remember for my lifetime to come. So my personal condolence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Shastri. Let me bring in Olga, who has had a lot of opportunity of interacting with Milindo, and then Eleanor, and then we close. So, Olga.
Thank you, dear Sachin. Indeed, yes. Also, my personal condolence to the family, and but I hope we can give you all the, let's say, good memories to what we experienced with him. And I have to say, I discovered him even more today, listening to all those statements. In our discussion, it was very, let's say, focused on issues, sometimes very philosophical, and where I was happy, especially happy that we could bridge this kind of technical development work, what we do within GIZ, with students, with inputs, insights from a new generation. And Lindo was behind that. We got a huge paper, huge document, thanks to him, with full of things and ideas, suggestions, and out of the box thinking from students we could incorporate in our work.
Olga, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah. I think some of the dimensions that are coming out are largely in terms of reminders, in terms of how we in the academics take up issues and in what way we find exit or entry routes for ourselves. And that's where, Olga, I feel the discussions which we had together with him and also independently you might have had with him, they are more a source of inspiration in terms of the kind of world that we want to have. And as everybody was saying, the idea of global south or the idea of importance of theory was something that he was trying to pack in with multiple variables. Eleanor?
Sorry, Professor Sachin, do you mean me or the famous?
Yeah, you.
Okay, well, hello everybody, and my condolences and thanks for having me. You've all got many more experiences than I do, and I'm slightly envious as a result. My last encounter, and we worked on the development cooperation review together, so it was 3 years, almost exactly. And I had the pleasure of having a few cigarettes with him because we had the same addiction. So despite his inability, physical inabilities or disabilities, he and I would still go and have a quick cigarette, or not so quick. And we talked about the triangular cooperation and the definition of that, and the need for countries to align on the very definition, on the basics as well. I recognize him in many of the things you say, but one thing that I really appreciated in listening to particularly him and Mario, who had many debates, was effectively his curiosity. He questioned everything. And as a former journalist myself, I appreciate that quality immensely. So I wanted to say thank you very much, Professor Sachin, for the opportunity to listen to you all today and for the opportunity to have worked with him. It was my honor, and I look forward to following you all from afar and seeing how you take Professor Milindo's ideas and perhaps his ethics and curiosity forward, and being able to balance and cooperate in global south even if that term in itself may be problematic, and the so-called North. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Our condolences are with Suparna, his wife, and his daughter, Dr. Turani. They are here with us, and I would very much like to convey our condolences to them, to the family, and would also wish community of ours to take forward the legacy. As multiple suggestions have been made, we would remember him. We would bring in those dimensions in our discussions. And I think the best part of academics is that you are there through your work all the time. The beauty of our profession is that you are present all the time. You are reminded, and of course, you keep on reminding through the kind of voices, footprints that you leave. So I once again thank everyone for their time and pay my condolences to Milindo. Thank you. Thanks for joining in. Thank you.